Employees of Boeing, what has the culture been at work the past few weeks? I work making products for Boeing and specifically the Maximum. We have about $70K in parts on each one and we've seen no reduction in orders. In fact, they've gone up. Not sure if this is related to Arp's question, but on the supply side of the aircraft, we're still pumping out parts for them. I'm an engineer at Boeing on the defense side. While I'm not involved with the 737 MAX, I am getting the same internal updates from Boeing leadership regarding the crash and subsequent investigations. Our leadership has repeatedly extended their deepest sympathies to the victims and families of the recent accident, but cannot reveal much more information until the investigation is completed. As far as I can tell, the engineers supporting the 737 MAX production line and fleet are working their asses off to get these planes back in the air. Our stock has taken a sizable hit, but our company culture seems strong enough to keep people motivated to keep working through this issue like any other. Not me, but a friend works at Boeing. His department had nothing to do with 737 and he said it's basically business as usual. That's no surprise. It's a big company. The people who work on the 737 MAX, especially its software, are probably too busy to be on Reddit, and have likely been reminded by lawyers not to say anything public anyway. My dad said some people are bent out of shape, but in general it's just focusing on fixing it, or for the majority of employees nothing changed as the 37 is part of a huge company. I feel like I'm pretty qualified to answer. I worked on both of the 737s that went down. Moral isn't any different, it just sucks, but we keep building planes and everyone does their best. We just have more meetings now about safety and keeping everything clean. They don't tell us BF about what happened, just a bunch of generic emails. Planes aren't moving as fast as before, but for the most part everything is unchanged. I studied abroad and went to a Boeing operation in Europe, and it was 2 days after the latest crash. They are mostly focusing on R&D for the autonomous flying taxi type thing, so they were not really impacted by it. They are a completely different division than the aircraft, so nothing really changed. I would think it highlights the issue of whether we're ready to trust full autonomy yet. The crashes were, from what I understand, preventable if the autonomous systems could have been overridden in time. A good friend of mine works for Boeing at the big HQ spot. He said personally no big change. I would wager there are two kinds of Boeing employees, pre and post McDonnell Douglas. Aviation insurance broker here. Comments are correct that Boeing won't say anything to imply an admission of guilt. When the liability suits are filed, the plaintiff attorneys will name just about every manufacturer who has component parts on the aircraft. Boeing is in the news because they manufactured the aircraft. However, the failure determined to have caused the malfunction that caused the crash could have been due to, for example, a particular bolt manufactured by a random company that had a batch slightly out of spec. Though what typically happens in these types of cases is that the insurers of the companies named in the suit will offer settlements to avoid going to trial, which is insanely expensive in the world of aviation. And fear not, my fellow Redditors. Air travel is incredibly safe. Most crashes are small private aircraft flown by non-pro pilots, and those are usually due to pilot error. Not having enough experience to correct a tricky situation, overloading the aircraft. Stay out of hot air balloons, and for the love of Christ do not take a helicopter tour. My father is part of the 737 MAX team and I have asked him this and he says the culture is basically the same as usual. The problem with the planes is very specific to the control system as we've seen on the news, so anyone not involved in that hasn't experienced much change at work. He also says anyone who isn't a higher up or directly involved with the faulty system doesn't get told anything, so they really only know what's going on from the news also. I've seen him rush across our house every time someone in our family calls out there is a Boeing story on. If anyone has any other questions like this, I'd be happy to ask him as he is fairly high up the chain of command there, just not high enough to be involved in the flight control system. I have an engineering mentor on my robotics team that is from Boeing. He said it's been in the back of his mind and it's a bit stressful, but he just keeps doing his job. I work across the street from the Boeing HQ, and when I see their employees walking around with sad faces, I just tell them to keep their chins up because it'll get better one day. It seems to me the last thing Boeing would want to do would be to put an unsafe aircraft in service in commercial airlines. There doesn't always have to be some sinister backstory to every accident or tragedy. Not going to go into any specifics, but I know someone in upper management. Basically, he said that the whole thing is a culture issue around design philosophy. Actually, he named some in particular who made a decision that was very integral to the issue. He worked with this guy for years and hated him. That guy retired a little while ago, but that culture remains to an extent. Design culture at Boeing moves slower than Congress, essentially. As far as what it's like right now, people like to pinpoint what went wrong and how to fix it, then call it a day. They have no intention to fix the root of the problem. That's engineering management at least. Veteran engineers know that the problems go deeper. 737 MAX mechanic here. Anybody in here who is claiming to be involved with the MAX and then starts divulging a lot of information is either A, lying, or B, about to get fired for being stupid. Our culture is the same as it's always been. We still have jobs, we still come to work and do our best, and that's all we can do. Hopefully this investigation resolves itself soon. Everybody is referencing the airplane situation. I'm more interested in how the teams for Starliner and SLS are feeling, considering the recent, widely publicized, success of the Dragon 2 capsule and that Congress NASA are considering giving SLS the axe. I work for one of the supplier of the sensors in question. Leadership isn't saying much other than we are waiting for the final reports and findings of the investigations. Let's not forget that the issues aren't just on the aviation side. Yesterday the Vice President made a speech saying that the delays and overruns on the Space Launch System are unacceptable and Boeing could be replaced by other companies if they don't perform. VP publicly pooped on Boeing. I just quit working there in January after 6 years. This was direction I saw it heading in, unfortunately. The FAA has pretty much given Boeing the power to govern themselves. Of course, Boeing is taking shortcuts to build planes faster, for example MFPP. This allows the mechanics to sign off on their own work without having someone else come back to check it and make sure it's right. I imagine that once this investigation is complete, the FAA will be taking more control over the inspection certification process. Boeing has put production speed over quality and it now shows. Don't work at Boeing. But I tell people who are clearly struggling with the crash to not bring the whole team into a nosedive because of them. I just wish more companies would take Toyota's stance that advanced safety features moving forward are being included on every car. Safety features shouldn't be options or extras. Beyond that, the fact that the jump seat pilot the day before the most recent plane crash knew how to override the system points to majority blame landing with the airline and less blame landing on the manufacturer. Has there been any conclusion in regards to the crashes? Do we know the cause or causes yet? Conclusion: no, that'll take months or years. Assumptions based on evidence: yes, but no conclusion. I did some volunteer work with a Boeing employee for 3 days last week. He said things were fine at work. Sometimes it's tense when someone drops a part and all work has to stop till it's found. Thanks for watching and please like and subscribe to support the channel.